There's a place etched in my memory, sharp and warm like summer sunlight through pine needles. My grandparents' house, nestled deep in what felt like the forgotten folds of the Ashihara Valley countryside. Not just a house, really. It was Kenji's quiet workshop smell, Hana's ridiculously comforting kitchen aromas, the creak of the old porch swing. Pure nostalgia, right? Getting my motorcycle license in high school meant freedom, and often that freedom steered me down the winding 2-hour route to their door. Just me, the engine's hum, and the open road. Bliss. Every visit felt like coming home. Except for the last one. That was the summer just before senior year kicked off, before life got complicated. It's strange, looking back. You remember the good bits, the warmth. But there's always this shadow underneath now, a cold spot. Because it's not just a place I haven't visited in years. It's somewhere I cannot return to. I remember pulling up that particular afternoon, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine resin. The sun felt good on my back after the long ride. Parking the bike, I felt completely at ease, utterly unaware of how the familiar peace was about to shatter. I stretched, scanned the quiet yard, thinking only of cool lemonade and Hana's welcoming smile. Just another perfect, lazy day unfolding. Or so I thought. I found a spot on the old wooden bench under the sprawling oak, the afternoon sun dappling through the leaves. Perfect. Just the lazy buzz of insects and the distant sounds of the Ashihara Valley settling into late afternoon. Peace. Then, cutting through the stillness. Puh, puh, puh. A strange sound. Low, resonant, almost rhythmic, but off. Like something heavy being dropped softly, again and again. Where was it coming from? I scanned the perimeter, annoyed at the intrusion. My eyes snagged on something white moving along the top edge of the high stone fence bordering the property. A hat. A wide-brimmed white hat, just cruising along the fence line. Weird. But then it kept moving, reaching the end of the fence near the dirt path leading into the woods. And a figure emerged. Tall. Impossibly tall. A woman, draped in a simple white dress, the hat casting her face entirely in shadow. She had to be 8 feet tall. Easily. The top of the fence, easily over 2 meters high, barely reached her waist. My brain stuttered. Stilts. Some ridiculous local prank. It had to be. Nobody is that tall. My mind scrambled for a rational explanation, anything to make sense of the visual mismatch, the sheer wrongness of her shape against the familiar backdrop. Disbelief warred with the image burned onto my retinas. The tall woman didn't look my way. She simply glided. Strode. It was hard to tell. She moved down the path, disappearing behind the dense summer foliage. And just like that, the strange sound stopped. Silence crashed back in, heavier this time, prickling with an unsettling energy. A prank. Definitely a prank. Some bored teens, maybe. I tried to laugh it off, shaking my head. Still, the image lingered, the stark white dress, the impossible height. A deeply unsettling feeling took root, a cold knot tightening in my gut despite the warm sun. Shaking it off, I figured I'd mention the weirdness to Hana and Kenji when they got back. It'd make a funny story later. Right? Yeah, it would make a funny story. That's what I kept telling myself as I went inside, shaking off the lingering chill. Hana and Kenji came in from the fields not long after, smelling of sun and earth, bringing their usual warmth into the old farmhouse kitchen. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Over tea, trying to sound more amused than spooked, I brought it up. Saw the weirdest thing by the path earlier, I started, forcing a laugh. Some ridiculously tall person in a white dress and a big hat. Looked like they were on stilts or something. Made this bizarre noise, like puh, puh, puh. The change was instant. Utterly terrifying. Hana dropped her teacup, the clatter echoing in the sudden, thick silence. Kenji, usually so placid, froze mid-motion, his face draining of all color. His eyes locked onto mine, sharp with an emotion I'd never seen in him before. Raw fear. A white dress. Hana whispered, her voice tight. A hat. Where, Kaito? Exactly where? Kenji leaned forward, his voice low, urgent. How tall? Did you hear the sound clearly? Puh, puh, puh. Was it exactly like that? The questions hammered at me, rapid fire, laced with a panic that made my own blood run cold. My attempt at a light-hearted anecdote dissolved. This wasn't funny. Not at all. Stammering, I confirmed the details, the path near the woods, the impossible height over the fence, the distinct, low-pitched sound. Kenji exchanged a look with Hana, a silent, dreadful understanding passing between them. He stood abruptly, moving stiffly to the old rotary phone in the hallway. I couldn't hear his words clearly, just hushed, urgent tones. Kaito saw it, yes, the fence, just now, while Hana sat at the table, her hands clenched together in her lap, trembling uncontrollably. My earlier unease morphed into a sickening dread. When Kenji returned, his face was grim stone. Hana finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper, thick with generations of fear. Kaito, there's something in this valley. An old thing. She explained the local legend then, the story whispered behind closed doors, the Hachishakusama. The 8-feet-tall ghost. Always female, always impossibly tall, always wearing something on her head, and always heralded by that dreadful, mocking p-p-p sound. And the curse. Hana choked on the word. Anyone targeted by it, anyone who saw it clearly, they were dead within days. She told me how the village elders, long ago, had supposedly sealed it within the valley borders using blessed obstacles, stones like ancient Jizo statues, at every entrance. A desperate measure, maybe linked to some forgotten pact with neighboring areas. My mind reeled, struggling to reconcile the cozy farmhouse with this sudden, chilling folklore. A prank? Stilts. My rationalizations felt pathetic, childish, faced with the stark terror in my grandparents' eyes. The legend felt horribly, sickeningly real. Just as that crushing weight settled over me, Kenji spoke, his voice heavy. I have to go get someone. Stay here. My grandfather didn't say where he was going, just that he needed help. The silence he left behind was heavy, thick with Hana's trembling fear and my own bewildered dread. It felt like hours, though maybe it was only 30 minutes before his car crunched back onto the gravel driveway. He wasn't alone. The old woman who followed him into the house was tiny, bird-like, wrapped in layers of dark, traditional cloth despite the summer heat. Her face was a roadmap of wrinkles, but her eyes, they were sharp, unsettlingly bright, and missed nothing. Mrs. Sato, Kenji called her, though she felt ancient, like someone belonging to the valley itself. She didn't offer greetings, just fixed her gaze on me, a penetrating look that seemed to peel back layers I didn't know I had. With a curt nod, she produced a small, folded paper charm, an ofuda, I guessed, covered in intricate black calligraphy. She pressed it firmly into my palm. Hold this, her voice rasped, surprisingly strong. Do not let it go. Understand? Without further ceremony, she and Kenji led me upstairs to a small, dusty room I barely remembered existing. It was empty, save for a threadbare sleeping mat. The ritual preparations began immediately, performed with a grim, silent efficiency that amplified my fear. Thick stacks of old newspaper were taped over the single window, plunging the room into murky twilight. More talismans, identical to the one clutched sweaty in my hand, were affixed to the paper-covered glass. A small, perfect pyramid of coarse salt was placed on a plain dish in one corner, a simple wooden bucket in another, alongside 2 bowls of clear, still water. The air grew heavy, charged with a solemn, almost suffocating energy. This wasn't folklore anymore. This was real. Then came the instructions, delivered by Mrs. Sato with Kenji standing like a somber statue beside her. You will stay in this room until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Precisely 7. Her sharp eyes drilled into mine. You do not open this door. For any reason. You will hear things. Voices. Perhaps even us. She gestured towards my grandparents downstairs. You ignore them. It will not be us. Do you understand? No matter what happens, stay inside and keep hold of that talisman. They left. The heavy door clicked shut, the sound echoing like a final verdict. Alone. Utterly alone in the sealed room, the silence broken only by the low hum of the small portable TV they'd left on a crate, flickering with meaningless late afternoon programs. A pathetic tether to a world that suddenly felt miles away. Fear, cold and absolute, washed over me. Isolation pressed in from all sides. Hannah had left rice balls and snacks, but the thought of eating was impossible, my throat was too tight with impending doom. I sank onto the mat, clutching the paper talisman, listening to the sounds of the house settling as dust began to bleed through the papered window. The long night had begun. I must have drifted off, huddled on the mat, clutching that paper talisman like a lifeline. Exhaustion finally claimed me. But not for long. I jolted awake, heart hammering against my ribs. The room was steeped in the dead quiet of the deepest night, the only illumination coming from the TV, now broadcasting some grainy, flickering infomercial. My phone clock glowed, 1:17 a.m. An uneasy feeling crawled over my skin. And then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, almost hesitant, against the newspaper covering the window. Just the wind rattling a loose pane. A branch scraping against the glass. Please, let it be a branch. But the air outside was still, utterly silent. Tap, tap, tap. It was deliberate. Someone, something, was out there. I held my breath, straining to listen over the pounding in my ears. Then, another sound. Faint at first, muffled by the door. A voice. My grandfather's voice. Kaito. Son, are you all right in there? Relief warred with the ice water flooding my veins. It sounded like him, but it must be terrifying for you. Listen, if it's too much, just open the door. You don't have to endure this. My hand instinctively reached for the doorknob, seeking comfort, safety. But Mrs. Sato's stern warning echoed in my mind, do not open this door. It will not be us. I snatched my hand back as if burned. The voice came again, closer now, wheedling, persuasive. Kaito. Why stay scared? Just come out. It's okay. It was Kenji's voice, the cadence, the tone, yet some fundamental wrongness beneath it made my skin crawl. Goosebumps erupted across my arms. Who, what, could mimic him so perfectly? My eyes darted nervously around the small, sealed room, landing on the dish in the corner. The salt. The pristine white pyramid wasn't white anymore. A sickening blackness crept down from the peak, staining the crystals like an insidious ink blot. Physical proof. It wasn't just fear playing tricks. It was here. Close. And then the sound returned, chillingly familiar now. Puh, puh, puh. Not faint this time. It was right outside the window. Deep, resonant, vibrating through the very walls. Immediately followed by a violent slam against the window frame. The newspaper rippled. Slam. Slam. The entire frame shuddered under the assault. Raw terror seized me, adrenaline dumping into my system. I scrambled back, pressing myself against the far wall, picturing impossibly long fingers tearing through the paper, a shadowed face leering in. I squeezed the talisman, whispering desperate prayers, incoherent pleas for salvation, for the sun to rise, for this endless night to just end. The onslaught continued, moments stretching into an eternity of shaking walls, the horrifying pa-pa-pa, and the monstrous presence just outside. I think I blacked out somewhere in the crushing terror. When I blinked my eyes open again, gray morning light was filtering weakly through the papered window. Silence. Absolute silence. The first thing I registered was the silence. No tapping, no shaking, no horrifying voice. Just the weak morning light filtering through the newspapered window. My phone screen showed 7:13 a.m. I'd made it. Scrambling stiffly to my feet, my eyes fell on the salt pile. It was entirely black now, every crystal corrupted. The sight sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. Shaking, I unlatched the door and peered out. Hannah stood there, tears streaming down her face, pulling me into a fierce, trembling hug. Oh, Kaito, thank goodness, thank goodness. Beside her, Mrs. Sato watched with those sharp, unreadable eyes, offering only a curt nod. Urgency radiated from her. Downstairs, my father stood waiting, his face etched with worry. He'd driven through the night. No time for explanations, the escape was now. Outside, the morning air felt strangely normal, but the scene was anything but. A large, windowless van idled ominously in the driveway, surrounded by half a dozen grim-faced village men I vaguely recognized. My grandfather Kenji stood with them, issuing quiet instructions. This was the extraction team. I was bundled into the van's cavernous back, placed squarely in the center seat. My father climbed into the passenger seat up front. Mrs. Sato positioned herself awkwardly on the center console between the front seats, chanting softly under her breath, eyes closed. The village men filled the remaining seats, boxing me in. 8 people forming a tight, protective cordon around me. One of the men beside me leaned close, his voice low but firm. Keep your head down. Eyes shut tight. Do not look up, no matter what you hear. Promise me. I could only nod, my throat dry with renewed fear. The van lurched into motion, bumping down the dirt track leading away from the house. The only sounds were the engine's groan, the crunch of tires, and Mrs. Sato's hypnotic chanting. Then, it started. Puh, puh, puh. Faintly at first, then louder, seemingly moving alongside the van just outside my window. Against every warning, my eyelids fluttered open for a split second. I caught a flash of white fabric, impossibly long limbs pumping alongside us, joints bending at sickening angles. The head was above the window line, unseen. It was trying to peer in. Eyes closed. The man beside me hissed. I slammed them shut, heart seizing. Bang! Something heavy struck the side of the van, making the metal wall beside my head vibrate. Bang! Bang! The impacts grew frantic, violent. I could hear sharp intakes of breath from the men around me, feel the tension coiling tighter in the cramped space. They couldn't see it, but they could hear it. They could feel it. Suddenly, the van jolted hard, bumping over uneven ground. The banging ceased instantly. The puh-puh-puh cut off mid-sound. We skidded to a halt beside my father's familiar sedan, parked just beyond a weathered stone marker, one of the village boundary obstacles. We were out. The van door slid open. Go. Quickly. Hurried outside, blinking in the brighter light. Kenji was bowing deeply to the village men. My father grabbed my arm, pulling me towards his car. I opened my hand, the one still clutching the talisman Mrs. Sato had given me. It was scorched black, crumbling into brittle ash between my fingers. Mrs. Sato met my eyes, pressing a fresh ofuda into my other hand. It cannot follow past the boundary, she stated flatly. You are safe now. My father bundled me into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and sped away, leaving the van, the village, and the unspeakable horror behind us. The drive home with my father was mostly silent, the unspoken terror a heavy passenger between us. I clutched the new talisman Mrs. Sato had given me until my fingers cramped. Back in my familiar room, surrounded by posters and textbooks, Ashihara Valley felt like a nightmare receding with the dawn. Life resumed its rhythm. School started, friends complained about homework, weekend plans were made. I tried. I really tried to bury it, to pretend that trip was just a bad dream fueled by teenage imagination and rural superstition. But the trauma lingered, a cold shadow beneath the surface of normal life. It was there in the sudden chills on warm days, the way I'd jump at unexpected noises, the reluctance to ever be truly alone in the quiet. Years passed. College came and went. I moved to the city, built a new routine. Hana passed away peacefully, and Kenji followed her 2 winters later. I heard through distant relatives that Mrs. Sato was also gone. The last threads connecting me to that place, to that horrifying summer, were severed. For a while, I almost believed it was truly over, that the Hachishakusama, if it ever existed, was contained within that valley, held fast by those ancient boundary stones. Sealed away in the past. Safe. Then, a few weeks ago, scrolling through regional news online after a typhoon swept through that part of the country, I saw it. A brief mention of storm damage in the Ashihara Valley foothills. Roads washed out, power lines down, and a small note about several old stone boundary markers near the village outskirts being damaged, one reportedly shattered by a falling tree. One near the western access road, where our van had made its frantic escape. A coincidence? Had to be. But since then, late at night, when the city quietens outside my apartment window, I've started hearing something. Faint. So faint, sometimes I think I'm imagining it, my mind playing tricks born of buried fear. Barely audible above the hum of the refrigerator. Puh, puh, puh.